Our guest today is a three-time Super Bowl champion, a two-time Pro Bowler, a free safety for the New England Patriots, and a member of their all-decade team. Our second Rutgers graduate guest on the show, but most importantly, dad to London and Braden, Mr. Devin McCourty. Thank you for being here.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. It makes me sound old, all decade team and stuff. Oof.
And remember to watch the video version of our podcast and see one of the greatest smiling faces of anyone in the NFL. Please visit neverloseyourcape.com. Devin, thank you so much for being here. We like to start every show with our warm-up segment because I get to ask two of my all-time favorite questions. Number one, what are you binge watching right now?
So I'm not binge watching, but we keep up with a bunch of shows. That's me and my wife's thing ever since we started dating. So of course, we're This Is Us, A Million Little Things. We watch Snowfall. And one thing that we watch, I don't think a lot of people still watch, we still watch MTV The Challenge. We are still big The Challenge fans. My college roommate, actually, I text him all the time. We watch it weekly. But I don't think a lot of people still watch that nowadays, but we are fully tuned into that.
Wow. I am a big This Is Us fan. I thought you were going to throw a Grey's Anatomy out there because
My wife used to.
yeah, because I watch Grey's Anatomy, but it's like Law and Order SVU now. So many people have faded out, but yeah, I still watch that one.
Yeah.
Okay, second question. Best thing about quarantine 2020?
Oh, for me, it was just being home. Especially because whether I'm in season or out of season, I'm always like going to this event, this dinner, this gala. So I've been able to just enjoy being home, and especially last year around this time when everything was kind of new. It was cool just waking up and the kids' school stopped. So it was me and my wife trying to do the lesson plans that they sent home for a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, which only lasted like a week. And then it was ABC. Like we were just figuring things out. So I think it was cool just trying to be problem solvers with my wife. We went and bought a playground set. Like we were stuck inside with just, with two toddlers running around. So we just kind of was drawing things up in the dirt and finding a way to get things done, which was it was new, different, but very exciting.
Please tell me you did not put together that playground set.
No, I did not. I did not trust myself to put my kids' livelihood on a swing.
Best decision you ever made. My husband and I when we lived in Connecticut, we put ours together. It says 8 hours. That thing took us 3.5 days.
That's
I
exactly why I
always
didn't do
tell
it.
people, always pay someone to put that together. That is way, way too difficult. And I don't like to pay people for stuff like that, but that is one thing that I advise all our listeners out there. If you buy a playscape, pay someone to put it together.
We figured that out when we bought like a little, and we bought a small trampoline, and we're in there, we're firing this thing up to put the springs on. I jammed my finger in one of them. Right after that, we were like, and then my wife is the type that, well, yeah, we'll get a small playground. And then by the time she looks through everything, we have not this massive playground, but a lot bigger than I imagined. So I knew right from now, I'm definitely not putting this thing together. No shot.
Smart man, smart man. All right, we're gonna get right into it now. As our listeners know, this podcast is all about perseverance and hope for our listeners. So we're gonna get right into it. Now, Devin, most people's first question to you, I'm sure, is when did you fall in love with football? But my first question to you is, when did you meet your wife? How did you guys meet? You've always spoken so highly of Michelle. Tell us the story of how you guys met.
So we actually both went to Rutgers. I was a sophomore and she was a freshman. And that was the first time we met. So at Rutgers, you have your whole summer program where, each guy takes a class or two in the summer, which schools use just so you could be up there to work out. And when you do that as an upperclassman, you always have some of the younger guys stay at your house. So we were able to move off campus. And we had a young guy staying at our house, a freshman, And his girlfriend used to come visit him, and that happened to be Michelle's best friend. And that was like, I knew who she was, but that was the first time we actually met, had a conversation. But at the time, she had a boyfriend. So all throughout college, we were always just friends. And then when she was in medical school, and I was gone, I was playing for the Patriots, I went back and visited. And then that's when we kind of started hanging out. And then in 2011 is when we actually started dating. But we were friends, for a good 4 or 5 years prior to that. And I guess they say, friendships make the best relationships. So it's been fun ever since then.
I appreciate the tenacity of that story. I love that you never gave up on it. She's got a boyfriend. That's okay. Let me stay with it
she
and
she
pursue the lovely Michelle.
she says that we wouldn't have made it when I was in college. I was too immature. So luckily enough for her, I didn't try until I was out of college.
I do think that there is something very dramatic to that because I always say to my husband, like, we probably wouldn't even have been friends if I'd known you in high school. So yeah, I met my husband in college too. So I think timing is very, very
I
key.
I definitely agree. I was not the guy that thought about having a girlfriend or anything in college. I thought that would hold me back from the NFL.
And now Michelle is just an amazing career woman. She's an amazing mom. But let me ask you, when did you know you wanted to be a dad?
I've always wanted to be a dad. I tell my wife that too. I think, for me, I lost my father when I was about to be 3 years old. So um, the thing that I guess it's kind of bittersweet as you get older, you kind of learn this is when I was young, I think when like people would find that out, I think automatically they would be like, oh my, I'm so sorry. But as I was growing up, like I didn't know what it meant to have a dad anyway. Like I was so young that I didn't know like, hey, I'm missing this. I mean, like the times I thought about it was obviously Father's Day. Anytime you were, in school and they had any type of, you know, father son thing, or a parent comes in or anything like that, then it would show up. But other than that, I never really thought about it. But I think as I got older, I would say probably about high school, and some of my teammates and stuff, they would talk about how annoying their father was when do this on the football field or basketball, hearing a guy's dad screaming from the bleachers. And I think at those times, then I used to just wonder, like, man, like I wonder how my father would be. Like I wonder, everyone used to tell me how good he was in basketball. I'm like, man, would he be that guy who stood on the baseline and tried to coach me up every chance? Would he not be that guy? So I think because of that, I've always had like this feeling of like, man, I can't wait to be a dad. Like I can't wait to have kids and teach them different things my mom taught me, and um, try to share that. I think because I missed that, and I think that's what pushes me to try to be a better dad, and to learn as I go. But a lot of my passion, I think, derives from not having that father, which sometimes can go different ways. I've kind of learned as I've gotten older.
Did now for our listeners that might not know, Devin has a twin brother, Jason, who also plays in the NFL for the Patriots. Did you and Jason, when you were children, did you guys ever talk about that? Like that, hey, it makes me feel bad when we have Father's Day stuff, or was it just you guys were in it together, you had your mom and that really helped you?
Yeah, I think as I'm older now, things were so much different. Like we never, I think about like a kid, if that happened now, I think you would talk to someone, you would, I think as a family, you would kind of set up something to have. And like for me, like we didn't have that. Like we didn't talk about that. My mom, we have an older brother who's 15 years older than us. My mom was a single mom. Like she grinded. She did what she had to do. So we never really spoke about it. And I think for me and Jay, we always, we're twins. And I think my mom did an awesome job of never letting other people turn us against each other. I think for anybody who is either a twin or a parent of twins, the outside world wants everything to be competitive. Who's faster, who's stronger, who can beat each other up. That's what we've heard our whole lives. But I think because my mom, we would get in more trouble with her for us fighting than anything. we learned to always work things out. And I still remember, I think it was our second year playing football, and we were playing our first game of the year. And it was the day of our father's birthday. It was September 10th, and we were playing on a Sunday in Pop Warner. And we were like, man, if we both score a touchdown, we're gonna get in the end zone. We're gonna do our handshake, and we're gonna point to the sky at the end of it so he sees. But we didn't tell anybody that. But it was something that like we both wanted to do bad. And I remember Jay scores early in the game, scores a touchdown. We get in the end zone together. We do it. We're happy. And it was kind of getting towards the end of the game. And I remember I get the ball and I cut back and I run down the sideline and we score. And then like we told our mom after, like, because everyone was like, what was it? In Pop Warner, you weren't allowed to do any celebrations. And we told our coach, and it was kind of like, well, why didn't you come and tell me? And I think it was something for us that, we both went through it and we talked about it, and I think it was just our own thing. Like we always, whether it was in school, athletics, like we always had like, I don't want to say weight, but we had this thought and this kind of mentality of like, how can we make our dad proud? And we felt like, sports was probably the biggest thing because he was, I guess a basketball kind of star in our era in Nyack, New York. So that's all we got to hear. Obviously we heard stories from my mom and our aunt who has sickle cell was a big reason why we do sickle cell. We heard their stories, but like when we would, an awards or any type of ceremony at the school, multiple times people will come up to us and they'd be like, McCourty, like, are you related to Cocky? And I remember we were in like middle school and we were like, who's that? And they were like, Calvin McCourty, Cocky. That's what we all called him. And we were like, yeah, that was our father. And then people would just tell us stories how, he jumped like this. He was the nicest guy. And so I think from there, we always felt like when we played sports, like that was a connection. We felt like when we were out there playing, like his presence was beaming, like he was smiling in heaven. So I think it was one of the biggest connections for us to our father. And I think it's kind of full circle for us and now to our kids of trying to be that father figure.
Isn't it so funny too, how now you remember yourself as a boy saying, you and Jason saying like, oh, we want to do this because we want to make our dad proud. And then now you're a parent and I'm a parent. And we know now that like, hey, we're proud of you for peeing on the potty. We're proud of you for keeping your hands to yourself. Like how little it takes for you to be proud of your child. And as a child, the other side of it is that like that's all you crave.
Mm-hmm.
And then you become a parent and you realize, wow, like my child breathing, I'm proud of them. Like they're
What?
showing acts of kindness, I'm proud of them.
What's crazy about that is my son now, he'll be 3 in April. And we got peeing on the potty down. Like we got that down. But pooping on the potty is an issue. So last Friday, the teacher emails us and she's like, we sat on the potty for 20 minutes, but he pooped on the potty. And I'm big on making deals with my kids. So they know like daddy's gonna make certain deals. And if you do it, so I told them, if he poops on the potty, you guys will get a fish. We'll buy fish. And it's fun because either one of them could do things. When my daughter was going through pooping on the potty, we did lollipops. So my son, he was younger. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew if she went in that bathroom and did something, he would get a lollipop too. Yeah. And so now that she's older and she knows for her to get a fish, he needs to poop. Just watching her come on, he'd be in the bathroom, she'd be rubbing on his back, she'd be cheering him on. And it was awesome because, last week we went and got the fish, like it just seeing their face walking through the pet store, picking out their fish. And it's like you said, but like, I didn't care. I'm going through all of these hoops and I don't know anything about having fish. So I'm asking these questions. I'm on YouTube, but it was all because like I wanted to reward him. I wanted him to know how awesome it is. And then this past weekend, he was pooping all over the place. Potty this day, potty that, because he gets candy and he gets to go say what's up to his fish named Noonie. So it's been very exciting. Just
It sounds like
what
A
you
plus
said.
parenting to me. I mean, you want to show them that you're proud of you. You know, what's so interesting too is that I always tell people that have never had a child but are expecting a child that having a child is kind of like winning the Super Bowl. You can meet someone that has won the Super Bowl and you would say, "Oh, congrats, man. That's so awesome. You won the Super Bowl. It must feel so amazing." And the person says, "Yeah, man, it was great. It was awesome." But you don't actually know how awesome it is until you yourself win the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And that's what I sort of tell people it is like when you have your first kid. So now I'm talking to somebody that has won 3 Super Bowls and had kids. So tell me what it was like for you when London was born. By the way, love the name London. My youngest, if he was a girl, he was going to be London. So
It's funny because I came up with London, but my wife swears she came up with London. But it was fun because London was born in 2017 when we won my second Super Bowl. So my wife probably shouldn't even have been in Houston at the Super Bowl, let alone pregnant woman due in March, running around acting like she's not pregnant. My mom told me numerous times, she was like, "All right, Michelle, like, let's calm down. Like, I know it's exciting. Let's calm down." But I went and got t-shirts made. I had Jay sent me a t-shirt, two-time Super Bowl champ, but today called me labor coach or something like that. So I had like 3 t-shirts made, all to bring London into the world. And I think it was amazing simply because I think in my profession, like you just said, the ultimate thing is winning a Super Bowl. And I won 2 of them. I had lost one. I had lost in the AFC Championship twice. Um, and I think so many people were like, man, having a kid's gonna be awesome. And even, as crazy, like even some of our coaches who have kids, I felt like it was like that Super Bowl was still like the thing, like, and I think they put in way more hours than us. Like it's different being a coach. And I used to sometimes sit there and I would wonder to myself, like, I kept thinking that my kid would be it, but I would see like, the reaction to the Super Bowl. And I'm like, dang, like, am I gonna feel like challenged that way that like this ring is gonna be more important than bringing and I was totally wrong. Like my wife's a doctor and probably to does her a huge disservice when she needs to be a patient. She was due on March 11th, but she didn't like the date, March 11th. So was gung ho that we would be in there March 10th and get induced and have the baby the next day. So of course we go in Thursday, get induced, all day Friday, nothing. We sat in in the hospital all day Friday. But me, like I said, awesome labor coach. I bring the Amazon Fire Stick, plug it into the TV. So we got things, but we're there all day Friday, and we didn't have London until Saturday at 4 o'clock. We spent hours in the hospital, and it was by far the best thing ever. My wife thought her pelvis was going to break. We had a total breakdown right before 10 centimeters hit. And, I think for me, it wasn't even close because I think, and because, it sounds kind of obnoxious because I've won 3, but I know like when you win that Super Bowl, it's the best thing ever that night. And then you have a good week and it's like you're here, you're there. And then all anybody says to you is, hey, when are we going to win number 5? Hey, when are we going to win number 6? Hey, when are we going to, like, that's all you hear. And then 2 weeks go by, no one cares anymore. And, having a kid is total opposite. You're in the hospital, the nurses are helping you, everyone's checking in. You get home, your mom comes, your in-laws come, and then a good 2 or 3 weeks go by and you're looking at your wife like, it's just us. We got to figure this out. So for me, it wasn't even close. Like it was the best thing of now having someone to rely on you and, staying up all night, giving my wife breaks. I try to do as much as possible. When we had her, it was in March, I would sleep 3, 4 hours, work out, come back home. But it was everything I wanted. So I loved every minute of it.
It is the true definition of like having your heart outside your body. Is that everything like it's also so funny when you leave the hospital, you're like, you just take the baby and go. Like that feeling for that first kid, you're like,
What,
what?
you
So we
trust
just
us?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you people are
So
crazy.
we just get to go now. We have this person.
Are you going to check my car seat? Is it in right? Like, it took me forever to
Exactly.
do this.
Exactly. And then London and Braden are real close, right?
13,
They're
13 months apart.
woo, 13 months. Good Lord,
13 months.
man. Although that's the way to do it for when they get older. My
Now it's
kids,
amazing.
yeah, when they're older, like that, when they're under 3, that's a little tricky, but when they get older, it's much because then you can do a lot of things together. Like they can ride bikes together. Like
Yep.
mine are gapped out a little bit more, which makes it a little bit challenging. But then, so you have amazing London and amazing Braden. And then in May of 2020, you and Michelle were dealt one of the most difficult hands that any person can get. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. I try to think for any individual when you go through something that is out of your control fully and is just absolutely devastating. I think for all of us, you try to find meaning in it. I think you always hear like everything happens for a reason. And I think you're tested though when something happens that I would say like you don't see any reason. Like I don't care who you are, like you can be a pastor, you can be anybody and have the most, you'd be the most faithful person ever, but like you try to find a reason. Your wife 31 weeks pregnant and was at the doctor's office getting an ultrasound a week before, and the next week, she says to you the night before, like, I don't feel great, like I feel like the baby's not moving. And the next day she says it again, and you're like, yeah, if you want, go get an ultrasound. And I'm like the total person, and my wife's like a huge worrier. And I think because of that, I try to always balance her by like being the ultimate, like, don't worry about it, like leave it alone. And like both my kids struggle with reflux. So they struggle eating like 5 percentile. My wife wanted to buy a scale and keep a scale at the house. And I'm like, no, we're not gonna do that. So even when she said it, I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, just like chill out. And I think even when I think back of that day, like one of the worst things for me was like even before my wife went, she was like, all right, let's pray. And I was like, we pray all the time. Like, you're just nervous. Like, it's okay. Like, don't. And I felt like that was and I don't think that's why it happened, but I just look back at that of why were you too big for the moment? Why did you try to overlook it? Like, your wife wants to pray, you pray with her. Like, that's what we do. But I still remember like her calling, and it's me and both of the kids at the house. And I was like barely make out a word, but she's just crying. I mean, right away I knew. And right away, because my kids are at the house and they're acting crazy and I'm yelling at them trying to feed them, um i just I think I just like turned everything off for a second, because I'm like, nothing I did made sense. Like, I could have called my mom lives 15 minutes away and she just come to the house. But right away I start packing their stuff up. I'm like, you're gonna go to Nana's house. I'm running around the house, and because all I'm thinking of, like, I gotta get to the hospital right away. I'm like, my wife's a huge worrier. She just got the worst news of her whole life, and I'm here. Like, I gotta be there. And I remember getting all of their stuff. Um, I grabbed pizza that we had in the fridge that I was going to heat up for them. I throw it in Tupperware. I get them all in the car. I'm driving down the driveway. I forget the pizza's inside, and so I reverse back and run in the house. And as I go to run in the house and grab the pizza, like, I just totally break down. Just break down. Call my brother and talk to him for like 30 seconds. But I think from that moment, like, I needed that. Like, I needed to break down. I needed to like just have a second. Obviously your kids are young. The last thing I want to do was just break down with them and, worry them. But I think that those 30 seconds to a minute that I got, for myself in that moment was what I needed. Like, I mean, just all out, you know, lose control, like just, I think it was just everything I needed. And that I think that just night and the next 2 days of just being in the hospital, because I think once my wife told me, like, I'm not a medical guy, like, I don't know, I'm not thinking of, and then it dawns on me as I'm sitting there that night, I'm like, man, like, we're gonna have to have a baby still though. And I think that was the worst part. And I remember talking to Matthew Slater on our team. Um, Him, my brother, and Deron Harmon were three guys that I would say for about a month, 2 months, I mean, would send me verses, would call me, would talk to me, and just make sure that, like, me as a person, that I wasn't giving out, everything to my family and not, giving myself some time to heal and grieve. But I remember I told Slate that night, I was like, I know it was a group chat with all three of those guys. I was like, man, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't think I could do this. I was like, I don't think I can sit in here and like understand, like, I'm already had two kids. Like, I don't think I can bring a kid in the world and not take it home like that. I was like, I don't think like this is like, I just don't think I can do it. And those guys just sending me verse after verse through that night, Slate calling and praying with me, Duran praying with me, um, got me through probably the worst, like just 24 to 48 hours of just sitting in there. And I think the wondering of it, of like, how's this gonna go? Like, what if this takes long? And it was just brutal. Not gonna lie, like, there was nothing um uplifting. Like, there's no traumatic story of like, I think the hardest and best feeling though was once Mia was born, of holding her. They told us that it was like, you should hold her, spend time, and even take pictures. And I remember when they said it, I was like, not like, no, like, I don't want to remember this, but we did. And I mean, cried and cried. But it was some type of closure, I think, to the understanding of like, what you bring in this world you love. And I think that's what was, when I had London, I was like, this is a miracle. Like, I remember when Jay called me when he had his daughter Liana, and he was like, only thing I could tell you, he was like, it's a miracle. He's like, you're sitting there and you're pushing and everything's happening. He said it's almost like dead silence. Like, you're like, there's a baby. Like, this is crazy. And that feeling didn't go away. Like, when we had her, like, it was the same thing. It was intense. It was, you know, and then I think the realization of once they brought her back in there, it was like, you can't take her home.
And
And
the hardest thing too is, aside from what you're dealing with, is that, like you said, so now Michelle is in 20 plus hours of labor to deliver a child that you know is not going to live.
mhm.
And how did you, as a spouse, as a partner, how did you deal with your own grief for yourself and how you felt, but then also like needing to support Michelle to get through actually delivering this baby? Because, like you said, you had this realization, I'm sure she did too. Now I have to deliver this baby that isn't going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so much, I think, emotionally, like, just going on in my head. For when I was thinking, we have two kids at home that don't know anything about this, but they know, mommy had a belly and there was a baby in it. And my daughter was fully aware of that, like, fully aware. And, I think that was one of the biggest things that we both took on as a challenge of like, how do we grieve and also still try to be parents? And I remember coming home and my daughter, who was 3 at the time, and like, was fully aware, like, well, where's the baby? Like, mommy, there's no more baby in your belly. Like, where? And we had to explain to her and tell her the baby was in heaven, and you know, we won't be able to see Mia for a while. And I think that's where I started to be uplifted. And my mom came over, my in-laws, they came over every day that week, and we needed it. And my mom came over, and my daughter was like, "Hey, Nana, um, I have a baby sister named Mia, but we can't see her right now. She's in heaven." And like every day when people come, like she would tell that story, and she would just say it in such a way that like she was so happy that she had this baby sister, and she was a big sister now. Brought a smile even though it was hard. Like we do our nightly prayers and she prayed for her. But I tried to, with my wife, I just tried to be there. um, Times where she needed to go lay down, she would go lay down at night. I called the two chaplains. I had Jack Easterby, who's now in Houston, and Seth McCoy, who was our team chaplain at the time and now in New England. Um, and I just was able to talk to them. And um, Jack was great because one of his close friends experienced that, and he was like, you know, you just gotta grab her arm at night, grab her hand, and pray with her. He said, and you just, at times where it gets too tough, he said, you just got to go and cry. He said, then at other times, you got to remember the different stories you've read. He was like, just imagine how hard it was for God to see Jesus on the cross, or the different stories. He was like, sometimes you just got to think that there's a bigger picture, and something that when you get there someday and he sits you down and he shows you your life, you'll understand more. And the crazy thing was, as I was helping my wife, and you know, I think we all grieved differently. We were still in the middle of kind of the pandemic, and we had already started our football meetings. And we had meetings, you know, every day for 2 hours. And my wife goes, "You're not gonna go to the meetings, are you?" And I was like, "I'm not ready to talk about what just happened." And I was like, "And I don't want to just not show up and not, you know." So I went and I did the meetings for a week. But the crazy thing of life was, this was right around the time George Floyd was murdered. And while we were in the hospital, like I think it happened the next day. I think it was on the 25th, and we lost me at the 24th. So when I'm in the hospital, like I'm getting these videos, and like I never really fully watched it, but I'm seeing it. I'm talking in group chats, um, and a lot of my grieving helped because I start to think like maybe this child wasn't meant to be born in a world like this. Like maybe she wasn't, you know, maybe as I look at my son who's crazy, climbs everything, will hit his sister in a heartbeat. And I look at my daughter who's the sweetest thing ever. No matter how bad things are, she'll come and she'll rub your back and ask you if you're okay. And always has like this super kind heart. I'm like, maybe she wasn't meant for this world. And um, I got to have deep conversations with the team where I'm tearing up, talking about things, tell them, you know, I think maybe it was a week later, as we're having conversations, tell them what we just went through, which was, I think, good for me because I'm a talkative person. I like leading people, and I wanted people to learn. I think once we announced the news, the best thing I think that helped both of us was how many people reached out. I had people that I would say I knew but didn't know that well. I had a friend reached out, and she told me, she said, we had 14 miscarriages. And I sat there and was like, wow. And she said, one of the biggest things that brings me hope and joy, she said, was every night my 4-year-old prays for each one of his brothers and sisters that he lost. And I think as much of that stinks that you hear other people's tragedies, but it gives you hope. I think like we spoke about before, of hearing other people's story sometimes gives you hope to move forward. And at the time in the summer, like me and my wife, we needed every bit of it. And so many people reached out, like just on Instagram and Twitter, like the DMs, I would go through and read them, of people sending paragraphs of their journey. And I really do. I think that uplifted both of us. But I would still say, until this day, we still go through it. You know, I think different things that come up, and shows and movies and stuff we watch, and a family goes through any type of infancy, like loss or like anything that happens, I think like it just hits you. It brings it up. All those emotions come back. I feel like I've teared up watching things more now when it deals with anything with kids, than ever before, because it brings you back to that moment of, you know, I think my life will be like that forever. So it
One thing
definitely
though
changed.
I really want to commend you on is that it sounds like both you and Michelle, you could have said that's it and collapsed inside yourselves, both you and her. And I think especially for men, it's very difficult to communicate your feelings and say, hey, I need help, hey, I need prayer, hey, I need a verse. And I think that it is so powerful. It's such a powerful message for you to tell, especially other men out there, that like you reached out, you were communicating with people, you weren't just like hiding in a closet. You were saying, hey, here's a, you're having a prayer conversation with this guy, you're having a text conversation with this guy, you're leaning on people, which I think is so important and I think is very hard for some men to do.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest fears is like you get close to the end of your career. Like we're so intentional in that, like because on the team, like Bible studies weekly, couple studies we have on Thursday nights, like we're so engulfed in each other's livelihood and how we're doing as men, because we see each other daily and we actually make time to make sure we discuss it and we talk about it. It's one of my biggest fears of when we retire and we're further apart, like how do we still create that? So when I went through what I went through, like I didn't hesitate to text those guys and tell them, because they were some of the first guys I told in that stage of, before the first trimester, like, hey, we're pregnant. Like these were those guys I told right away, because the crazy thing is I've always said that to my wife. I said, I tell the people that if something went wrong, I know I would need. And those were the guys, and my mom, like those people I tell right away, because I know I'm going to need them in every part of when a baby's born. If something bad happens, like I'm going to need them. And right away when we got that news, I was like, I can't handle this on my own. Like I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. Like I'm like, I don't know how this is, like I didn't know how it was going to impact me. And I think the pandemic and everything, it just motivated me to not, like you just said, not be defeated, not turn into a terrible dad, a bad husband. It was just trying to find a way. And one of the hardest things that I had to think about all season was I felt like I had an outlet. Like I could go to work each day, I could be with the guys. And it was one of the hardest things as like we started football. And I said to my wife, like, I was like, I don't know if I should play, not even just the pandemic. But it was just like, I don't want to go and like you just, be here. And that's why, like I won the Bart Star Award this year. And I told him, I was like, I didn't win this award. Like my wife allowed me from not even a physical standpoint to go, but mentally to be able to be gone and be fully engulfed in football, fully, there with my teammates, improving. Like she allowed me to do that by just being so strong. Like if she would have told me to go and I saw her not being able to handle things, I couldn't have done it. But just seeing her, and I always make fun of her, talking about how bad her mental toughness is because she sets 10 alarms to wake up in the morning. But like when things got tough, like mentally, she's a rock star. Like she's a beast of just being able to be a mom, through the hardest time of, you know, I think all of us, when you have something happens to you and you have two kids at home, all you could think about is the one you lost. And I think that's so natural. But she still found a way to just be the best mom to the two kids we had. And I think that allowed me to go out there and play a game that I love, and really helped me through this season, was just because of how special she is.
Now, for me personally, I've had a long journey of infertility with my children, and we were in infertility treatment for 2 years for my youngest, and we had 16 procedures over the course of my children. And when I had that last one, I knew we were coming up on 2 years, and I knew that they were going to basically like cut us off, right?
Mhm.
So I knew they were going to say to us, like, it's been 2 years, we've had a lot of procedures. So I had this last procedure, and it didn't work. And that day was the lowest moment of my life. And I can still, it's weird. Like if I pause and I think, I can like go back to that place
Mhm.
for a few seconds and sit in that darkness. And a lot of not so good things happened to me in 2020. And I always sort of looked back and said, that was the darkest place of my life. And I'm not near that again, thank God. But that was very, very difficult for me to sit in that. When you felt like you were in this dark place, what did you do besides prayer and reaching out to friends? Was there anything else that you did to help bring you out of that darkness that might help other people?
Yeah, so for me, I listen to sermons. So there's this guy, Charlie Gates, out of Chicago, that's a pastor. And because of quarantine, I was like, because I always struggle to go to church, obviously during the season. Then I come back home, and it's trying to find a church I want to go to. I'm like, it's pandemic, everything's virtual. So I actually turned it on and started watching them, every week, in April. And just crazy. He's going through the book of James. And the book of James, the first chapter in James, verses 1 to 3, consider all trials you go through, to teach you about endurance and to get through, and persevere. And those were like, as he's going through the book of James, then this happens. And I'm like, what are the chances? Like the biggest trial, I'm over here going through the book of James, which is, probably the most practical, uh, person in the Bible, Jesus' half brother, who, wasn't really a believer when Jesus was born, but after he dies and is resurrected, he fully engulfs himself with Jesus and teaching people about, trials and temptation. And, so I'm going through this, and right from there, I'm like, I need to stay on this. And each week, I would listen. And then I want to say it might have been late. I mean, it might have been late June. The pastor loses his mom. And he takes time away and he comes back and he starts talking about, Daniel, and talking about, Jesus getting in the fire with you. And Slate had, sent me Tony Evans, talked about that, of when you go through things, he gets in the fire with you. And
Mhm.
for me, I felt like that's where I was. I think someone could ask me, what did you learn? What's next one? And I was like, I don't know. But I was like, I know for a fact that somebody's in here with me and helping me, because I knew for me, I didn't have it. Like I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't meant to go through that. Like me as a person and how I am, um, and I think overall, me and my wife, honestly, I don't think just, I think us as a whole, like that's not something that you would say like that's going to be easy for them to get through. But I felt like, he was right there with us. Like we were in the fire, and I felt like tough times. I felt like things just kept happening. My friends kept sending food daily, even 3 weeks after. I'm like, we're all right. Like we're cooking, we're back. And they're like, no, we're going to look at restaurants. We're going to send you food. My mom kept coming over. Like all of these things kept happening during a pandemic where it was fear, was everything going on. But I felt like people kept extending themselves to make sure we were okay. People that I don't usually talk to on the phone was kind of annoying at the time. Like I didn't want to talk, but they were reaching out. They were calling. Like people were texting. I just felt like that was him. Like he was there. He was like, I'm going to keep sending you people that are going to help you get through this. And I think that's what it was for me. And I think for people, when you're going through something, I think, like you said, don't sit in that darkness. Like keep searching, keep finding things. Like for me, it was my drive to working out, to listen to these sermons, and whether it was an hour and 50 minutes, I get 30 minutes on the way to work out, 30 minutes on the way back. The next day we finish it. Like I needed that. I needed every minute of it. And I have in my note section on my phone, I just have all of these notes, because like I was just diving in, because I felt like it was talking to my soul, like I needed that. And for me, it was super beneficial. But I think for each person, you have to find that, and you have to find something for yourselves. Like you can't dive into something else. You know, you can't dive into your job, or, even dive into your kids solely, because you need something that's going to sustain you. And I felt like through that time, I got to know more about myself. And I felt like no matter what happens in life, like I know I'll be all right. Like if I got through this, I know I'll be okay.
Yeah, I love what you said too. The Lord never promised us that we wouldn't walk through fire. He promised us that we would never walk through fire alone.
Hmm.
And that's such an important piece of this to remember. And again, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You just said I couldn't do this alone. And
Hmm.
I think that's how, look, there have been some points in my life where sometimes the answer is just pray. Like
Hmm.
when you feel absolutely helpless and you're stuck, sometimes the answer is just pray. And then somebody else told me, when I was in that dark place, somebody said to me, God really loves the children.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just that simple. We're not meant to understand it, but we just need to have it in our heart that
Hmm.
he knows what's best for us and he has a plan for us, and we'll get through it with him
Yeah.
and with leaning onto others for
And
sure.
one of the best things we got to do, was a bunch of the family came over, my mom, my in-laws, Jay and his kids, and we kind of did our own little memorial. We got balloons, we blew up balloons, and we got note cards, and each person on a sticky note wrote kind of a letter and stuck it on a balloon, and we sent the balloons up in the air. And for me, it was awesome to be able to do that. But it was even awesome. I think it was even better for me to watch my kids, how excited like my daughter was that like she was gonna send a letter to her sister. She was gonna
Mhm.
say hi. And that's something that we'll do every year. And um, I think it's just really good, because like like me as a person to us, that's a angel we lost, and I think for us it's something, um, that we'll never forget. But I also want to make sure it stays a part of us. And it was awesome to play this year. I got to to my calls, my cleats, and go out there and play a game. And all I'm thinking about is my wife, and I got pink cleats with rainbows and wings on them, and
Mhm.
scoop up a blocked field goal and score a touchdown. I just felt like I told my wife, I said, I just feel like something good's gonna happen in this game for you to see and just be uplifted and blown away. And it was just like you said, it was a crazy year. But I think through it all, we leaned on each other more, and then ultimately we leaned on the Lord to really guide us through.
What is your final message of hope that you want other people to know?
Um, I, I think I'm so blessed. I think for me playing football and the things that I've invested my time in off the field, um, I've gotten to work with so many different youth. I've gotten to work with incarcerated youth, formerly incarcerated, former gang members. Um, and so we talk about hope all the time. I'm always sitting in there. I come up with these great things to say about hope. And um, when you go through your own thing, though, you test the things that you preach to other people. Um, and for me to be able to still do those things this past year, stand in front of people, stand in front of my teammates, and cry with them, talking about my fears of raising kids in a world of social injustice and all those different things. Um, I walked away with so much hope because I get to look at my kids, I get to look at other people, um, I get to see some of these kids who have a crazy story, graduate college. I got to give a check to a young lady who couldn't afford to go to nursing school, but that check was going to get her through, and allow her to go to nursing school and to pursue her dreams. And now she is out of nursing school, graduated, has a job. Like for me, seeing other people's story brought me so much hope in 2020. It always did, but this past year, seeing so many people wanting to get involved, being on the New England Patriots gave me the most hope, even though we were 7-9 and didn't go to the playoffs. Because every Monday we sat around and we took an hour out of the day to talk about social justice. Like the one place that people call and say, this place only cares about football. They don't care. Like the Bill Belichick was in here and we're learning about people in Armenia because of Bill's assistant bearers. We're learning about food security. We're learning about kids with mentor programs from police officers. Like that hope that I got from just seeing change and seeing people's hearts be altered in a way that I think they would have never imagined in this past year. I felt like my story and my journey all fit 2020. And I felt for a lot of times just I was sitting there watching. Like I just felt like almost outside of myself, watching things happen in a way that like I couldn't write it down, I couldn't draw it up. So I would say I saw hope in everything around me that I would say in years past I really didn't see. Especially the social justice stuff of being on the team. I got frustrated, angry, like why don't more guys want to be involved? Why can't we make this a bigger thing? And then for some, like I saw it all coming to fruition this past year of things I was angry about, I was satisfied with, I was content with. I saw all that this past year.
Well, Devin, you certainly give me hope, and your story of perseverance, without a doubt, lifts me up. And I'm so incredibly grateful that you trusted me and you were vulnerable with us and you shared your story, because I know it's certainly going to give a lot of people hope when they feel at their absolute lowest, like I did. If you have any further questions or comments for myself or Devin, please visit our website, neverloseyourcape.com, and send us a note in the contact us section. And as a reminder, to see the video version of this episode, visit neverloseyourcape.com. Devin, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here.
No, I appreciate you doing this. I think this is an awesome platform for people to just be themselves. And I think we don't have a lot of that nowadays. So I appreciate you asking me to come on and being able to just talk.
Thank you.